How do you respond when the subject of Brexit comes up? Me too. And to be honest, it's hard to even know what Brexit is.
I get it. I don't get it.
But is there anything we can say when the subject comes up that might move beyond tribal politics and point people to deeper issues in life? Here, we've come up with 10 questions you can ask when a Brexit conversation surfaces. They aren't answers. We don't have any answers.
I have nothing!
But they might probe and nudge a conversation towards the good news of Jesus. Ready? Here goes.
We're going in hard! Strap in!
Question 1. Are you optimistic about the future? So many Brexit conversations slide into questions of ultimate destiny and hope. On the one hand, people often have Martin Luther King Jr.'s view. The arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. So they really believe in progress, and that maybe they're on the side of progress, they're on the right side of history. But where does that belief come from? If the world is a random flow of purposeless cause and effect, why do you think history is headed somewhere? I believe in Jesus, and his story shapes history. I think he'll come to bring about ultimate justice, but without Jesus, where do you ground your optimism?
Question 2. Are you pessimistic about the world?
I think you ought to know I'm feeling very depressed.
When Brexit comes up, hopelessness is not far away. Many people think the world is headed to hell in a handbasket. You'll find a lot of pessimism around when Brexit is mentioned. But again, we should ask, why? Where's the pessimism from? It might be really well founded, but it might also betray a view of the world that says things will only get worse and then you die. It might be an opportunity to talk about a greater hope.
Question 3. Is politics important to you? It takes up the column inches of our newspapers and it floods our news channels, but how much does Westminster or Brussels affect us day to day? How much importance do we give to those power centres? I mean, who has the power?
If the right people don't have power, do you know what happens? The wrong people get it.
Is Westminster or Brussels really where power lies? It might be, but it's worth talking about.
Number 4. What are the personal effects for you?
It's the end of the world as we know it.
Just be curious. Maybe they have insights into the financial world, or imports and exports. Or maybe they're a farmer or Northern Irish, or involved in fishing or many other areas very closely connected to Brexit. You might be able to learn something on the ground about the issues, putting a face to the generalities we often speak in. But if there aren't any specifics, but only a generalised view, it might be worth pressing into that. What should we be concerned about day to day? What really matters? That brings us to...
Question 5. What really matters to you in 2019 and beyond? Here you want to get beyond the issue of Brexit. Start talking about the important things in your life. At a local level, family and neighbourhood and church and our everyday interests take up so much more of our time. And at an international level, the good news of Jesus is going forwards. The church, the largest sociological phenomenon the world has ever seen, is growing. You won't read about that in the newspapers. But the headlines don't always capture what's most important.
Question 6. What's your view of politicians?
Can't you morons do anything right?
Yep, that's how we tend to see politicians. Briefly, we put politicians on a pedestal, but only for about 4.5 seconds. Then we want to bring them down.
Yes. We takes back control. Money, borders, laws, blue passports.
We think of politicians as liars and fools. Politics is just show business for ugly people, right? Well, where do we get those views from? Actually, all of us deep down want a ruler to make everything perfect. We expect our leaders to be a messiah figure. So of course they'll disappoint us. There's only one messiah who can meet our expectations. Which leads us to...
Question 7. Do you think you or I could do a better job?
I'd like to see you do better.
This is vital. Many of my Facebook friends think that they could solve Brexit when they can't even spell it. We can definitely have grievances with the way that many people have acted throughout this whole process, but it's important that we recognise that with every pointed finger there are 3 fingers pointing straight back at us. In the Brexit omnishambles, we can see the problems with the whole human race, me included. But unfortunately, we don't tend to think like that. We tend to think that we're fine, it's the other guys that are the problem. Therefore,
Number 8. How do you think of the other side? The other guys are the problem, right?
She's the worst person I've ever met.
Brexiteers say it's Remainers, Remainers say it's Brexiteers. It's always the other side. This tribalism is described in the Bible from day one. We're brilliant at playing the blame game.
You know what I blame this on the breakdown of? Society.
It's easy to blame others, even to blame society. But again, you want to nudge the conversation towards a bigger view of human nature. I often mention the Alexander Solzhenitsyn quote, "The line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being." That brings us to question 9.
can you put the other side's argument? In one sense, it's really easy to describe someone else's view.
You stupid bull.
But it's really hard to describe someone else's view in a way that they would recognise.
So you're saying you've done your research and women are unhappy dominating men?
I didn't say they were unhappy dominating men.
Maybe play a game with your friends. See if they can put the other person's point of view. It'll be a great exercise in transcending tribalism. And then finally,
Number 10. Who do you trust on this?
Information. You won't get it.
The trouble with Brexit is not just that I don't know what to think, I don't know who to trust. There are so many voices and they're all very loud. Who knows? And how do we know that we know?
And when it comes to establishing your worldview, I was curious, what newspapers and magazines did you regularly read?
I've read most of them, again, with a great appreciation for the press, for the media.
But like what one specifically, I'm curious that you...
all of them.
This gets us into the question of faith directly. For me, I don't ultimately trust humans who have only a breath in their nostrils. But I do trust a guy who endured pretty incredible political upheaval. He was born under Roman rule. Some of his countrymen, like the tax collectors, were colluding with the Romans. Some of them, like the Zealots, were freedom fighters who wanted a violent exit from Rome. Jesus made both into disciples, both Matthew the tax collector and Simon the Zealot. And he got on with his world-changing ministry, largely apart from politics. Eventually politics caught up with him and he was crucified under Pontius Pilate. But God raised him from the dead to birth a kingdom that is spreading throughout the world and crossing every border. I don't know where history is headed in the short term, but ultimately, I trust him.
Well, what about you guys? Have you ever had a Brexit conversation that you were glad to have? What sorts of things did you talk about? We're not wanting to solve the political issue, so let's not start that fight in the comments, please. But if you've been able to speak good news into this issue, we'd love to hear about it. Tomorrow, we'll discuss this more on the livecast, so tune in to Facebook Tuesday at 1 PM. Thanks so much.